here we are. Thank you so
Okay,
much.
we both made it. Both made it.
All right. So how are
Um,
you?
Not too bad. Look, I should just do a little intro at first, both for myself and for you. I'm Mark Mordew. I run a Substack account called The Slider. You're actually my second ever interview on The Slider. But I was really drawn to your work. Um, Soon you'll be speaking at Addy Road in Sydney's Marrickville, which is a community centre where I work, and you'll be discussing the history of what you do. I should introduce you to Hector. I don't actually know how to pronounce your last name, Hector
Aristizábal.
Aristizábal.
Yes.
Um, Hector is from Colombia. He's involved artistically with the history of a form of theatre that involves healing trauma that, as I understood it, is connected to the theatre of the oppressed, which originally stemmed from Brazil. And Your own history is pretty intense and pretty fascinating, and you've obviously sought to combine your life's work as a therapist and your artistic interest through theatre to help not just individuals but communities through what you do with theatre and therapy work and the way you combine it. And that work comes out of a pretty fascinating personal history. And without wanting to be too voyeuristic about it, I was pretty irresistibly drawn to the fact that you yourself, during your youth as a young student and an activist in Colombia, were arrested and tortured. And this experience, for better and for worse, was a turning point for you and set you on your path to where you are now, both as an artist and a therapist. So it's a pretty amazing history, Hector. And I guess to begin with, it would be interesting to hear from you just about that moment for you that's both personal and historical, because I've seen you on TEDx speaking about it when you speak as a young man, the military trucks coming into your neighborhood in Medellin, Colombia, and you because you're such a theatrical translator of your work, your body's shaking with the neighborhood. And I was really struck by that performance because it was as if the invasion of that totalitarian state was entering your body, and the memory was a body memory as well as an actual memory. And obviously, that's a part of your theatrical technique as well, and a very powerful part of it. But I thought, wow, this guy's doing pretty special stuff. And it made me want to talk to you.
Oh, well, no, thank you, Mark. And I feel that what you're describing is inside all of us. I mean, that our bodies are the recipients of all the experiences that we have as humans. We are embodied beings, Whether we think that we are embodied spirits or not is up to everybody. But but we definitely live in this amazing ecosystem
Mhm.
of not only human cells, but millions of viruses and bacteria and fungi. And this is very recent in our awareness, that we are interwoven, interconnected to the web of life. And and on the other side also, and this is new for me in my awareness, that we're also cosmic beings, that like is reason for me to go from eco or anthropocentric view of life and my own life to a biocentric, ecocentric view of life. And now I'm also very interested in cosmos,
Mhm.
How are we connected to the history of this amazing thing we call the universe or the world or the earth? And but then going back to the experiences that you mentioned, yeah, we all are born in a specific place and a specific moment in the history of that place and the humans and the more than human world. And I happened to be in Medellin, Colombia, as it became one of the most violent cities in the world because we had not only the presence of the guerrilla movement that was using Marxist ideology to promote some kind of revolution against the capitalist model that was implemented in the country. But in South America, it was mostly through dictatorships and very overt repression of anyone who thought differently. And so many of us fell into that net of capturing what they call subversives or people who thought differently. And almost any student of social issues was considered a threat for the status quo. Whether we were a threat or not is another conversation. But the message when you are tortured and the message when you are hit with such violence is a message for the others to not do it, or else this might happen to you, which is always the message of violence and justify violence. And there is no way to justify violence anywhere, or to justify killing people or torturing people. But that was just my particular story, and the story, unfortunately, of many people, including one of my brothers, who was many years after we were tortured. He was horribly tortured by the paramilitary groups in Colombia and shot in the head, as many of the victims of the paramilitaries. And what these events do to all of us, they are I see them now, many years later, as moments of rupture in which whatever our identity was at the moment gets completely broken in pieces. And we are left to rebuild ourselves, to remember, our dismembered bodies, and to, yeah, to reconstruct who we want to be or we can be in the world. And the community used to be very important for that, but in modernity, most of us are left to deal with it on your own, hold your own pain, your own trauma, or in the best case scenario, go to psychotherapy or use meditation or whatever is at your you have access to. And so right now, from that experience, my main interest has not only been healing my own wounds, but also connecting to groups and communities who are interested, because we only heal in community. This is not an issue that is personal. This, well, when you bring out your woundedness, you discover that you are connected to many, many other people. And there are also collective wounds, collective trauma that we're dealing with, generational trauma, ancestral trauma that we're dealing with. And the beautiful thing about all of this is that we can make it present in the here and now, and we can work on it.
Wow, there's a lot. They're up there to unpack.
Yes.
I guess I think that the obvious with regard to more privileged sort of Western societies where trauma through psychology and other forms tends to be treated in fairly individuated ways.
Mhm.
And when you're reading the history of a country like Colombia, which I don't pretend to know that much about at all, that's so profoundly surrounded by trauma and people instigating trauma, be it the military, be it the government. It's not just an individual thing, it's a social thing, and it's a social thing realized with tremendous intensity. I thought about what kind of torture you went through, and then the way you talk about your brother and the strange physical connection you must have felt through that one experience translating to the knowledge of what did happen and might have happened to your brother, that your body itself would have carried you to him. And I saw you speaking about the loss of your brother and the way in which he was, the sanctity of his life with absolute impunity was destroyed, I think was the words that you used. And you began to talk about the obvious, that you were inundated with hatred and a desire for revenge. And you talked about the killer breeding inside of me, which I found very powerful. And I know that you have used theatre and therapy to both heal yourself and heal other people, and yet intellectually and emotionally as a human animal, I sometimes wonder when people do that kind of thing to one another, to someone else, that sort of beast, that monster, if they've abrogated their humanity. But you seem to believe that their humanity is rescuable.
Mm. Yeah, and thank you for bringing that and for your sensitivity in listening to some of the things I shared in the past. And I don't pretend that theater can heal everybody. It's just one of the ways that I feel can be a path for towards healing in the sense of transforming the way we deal with the traumatic events in our lives. Because trauma is not so much what happens to us, that you were abandoned, that you were raped, that you were tortured, that you witnessed a massacre, that you were part of a natural disaster and witnessed terrible destruction. Yes, those are traumatic events, but not everybody gets traumatized by them. We get shocked and we can be in shock for a few months or weeks or years, but trauma is more the moments in which our psyche feels overwhelmed by an event that threatens our integrity, whether it's physical, emotional, spiritual. And the way we deal with it, most of us, is protecting ourselves, you know. And so we fight when we can. We escape. We the fight, flight, freeze. You know, we fly, and we can even fly not just with our bodies, but we can leave our psyche. We can ascend, get out of our bodies. That happened to me when I was being hung in a posture called el potro, which is very, very painful, where they hang you with your arms backwards, and then they hit you and they electrocute you. And of course, that is somehow we had this incredible capacity to leave our bodies. And the process in life then is how do we reintegrate to ourselves, and that can take many years. And but then when something triggers the trauma, like for example, I hate when I am electrocuted, even by fixing a ball, and I just it just puts me in a great deal of fury. And for many years, it will give me a headache, and it will take me back to the chamber of torture. Now it doesn't happen. I mean, I don't like it, but it's not so dramatic, etc. We all have triggers that it doesn't matter what age we are in. You say something, you look at me in a certain way, you mock me, and then I'm no longer 65 years old talking with you through an interview. I become 12 years old and I feel threatened by you or whoever in a group, whatever. And then I am 5 years old, 7 years old, being humiliated by a teacher or an adult important in my life, etc. So we all go through this, and but the main woundedness that I have experienced in my life and the people I work with is this idea that we all carry gifts for the world, that we all carry medicine for the world, that we all decided to incarnate because we saw a paradigm, a life that we wanted to live in order to become who we are. So the things that happen to us don't happen to us to screw us from what we wanted to be. No, they are like challenges. They are like initiatory moments
Mhm.
that want to awaken who you are. And especially the ordeals of life and death are an amazing opportunity for us to get in touch with the internal resources we all have that can be awakened in that way. They don't get awakened just sitting on your house or laying in your hammock smoking marijuana. It doesn't seem to help much. But sometimes every time we go through a very difficult ordeal, there are things in us that are awakened. The problem is that we no longer have societies that are paying attention, communities, elders, mentors who know you and can help you integrate the experiences. And I feel that theater, at least for me, has been the symbol had given me the symbolic language to, for example, tell my own story of torture, talk about my brother, talk about many issues that affect me, that intrigue me, and transform them, transmute them into the substance of theatrical um, language. So when I tell my story, I become the author of my story, not the victim of my story. When someone writes a book, I wrote a book called The Blessing is Next to the Wound, where I reflect on moments, pivotal moments in my life that I felt were informed, not defined, but informed a great deal of who am I and the choices I have made, but also the process getting there. You mentioned when my brother was killed, I became a killer and a serial killer. I had enough imagination to kill the 43 million Colombians that existed in that moment in the year 2000. And including my family, members of my family that I consider right wingers, that I consider support the status quo, support torture. They pretend that it's not happening, support the paramilitary groups, support the guerrilla, etc. Even with them, I felt very aggressive. But I had these tools to do that: poetry, theater, scenes, language, like I'm doing right now. And because that exists in me too,
Yeah.
that desire for revenge, that capacity to kill. Witness the incredible injustice happening today in the world with genocide and ecocide being televised every day in front of us, of course, sometimes I feel that.
Mm.
Then I have to use it. I have to use that energy, that powerful energy of anger, which is the desire for justice, and see how I can convey it because I'm not going to become one more killer in the world.
Yeah.
But it lives in me,
Yeah.
it breathes in me.
It's really interesting to hear you talk because obviously I'm a writer um, and I find the language of poetry is helpful to me.
Okay.
Uh, and I seem to turn to that language very intensely about a decade ago when I was going through a lot of really difficult changes, and I felt as if I'd been cut open by those changes, and yet at the same time, this kind of gift came to me, and that it hasn't left me. Although sometimes I get frightened it will leave me, but it does not seem to. And it's like I found a language that I had, but not to the extent and the intensity that I found a decade ago. And it sounds to me a little similar what you're talking about. I've seen you do a little bit of Night Wind, which is about your experience of being tortured and your brother being tortured and killed, and the memories in other ways as well. And whenever I've seen you do any performing, it's really powerful. But it's like the acting is another language, another body.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Um, to free, not just to free yourself, but to help free people. But what I found doubly interesting was that when you've worked in Northern Ireland, you've worked in the Ukraine, you've worked in prisons, you've worked with youth gangs, you've worked with people dealing with AIDS, you've worked with in hospice with people dying, like all these different circumstances where you've applied yourself. But now you're back in, well, you were back in Colombia for quite a period of time, and I was just struck that you use your theatre and therapy techniques, and you involve both perpetrators as well as victims. Um, and I just thought that was pretty amazing, particularly because I feel at the moment that we live in a time of hate, and the idea that we can be in dialogue with an opposite, a literal other in a political, social, whatever sense, is almost verboten. There seems to be no room to have that communion anymore.
yeah. Yeah, yeah. And it happens even inside families. And sometimes it
Yeah.
happens even between us and our children, or us and our beloved partners. It's um but yeah, I think it's a process. I When I left Colombia, I was 28 years old. I went into exile. I felt that it didn't mean anything if I was killed, as so many of my friends were being killed. So I didn't even know who was killing us or how to protect ourselves. So I said, this is ridiculous, and I left. I went into exile. I went to the last place in the world, the United States, because for me it was the evil empire. And then I realized the American people were as much victims of their government as all of us everywhere else. They are also responsible in terms of who they are continue electing. But then and I was 28 years outside of Colombia. And in part of that, I had this incredible privilege to travel with my plays and to do theater with communities and to invite people to create plays about the issues that concern them, that had to do with their collective traumas and their communal traumas, and activate the imagination. What can we do about this? Because we don't know what to do. So, but we can engage together in this collective ways of imagining what can we do about this. And through theater we can project those problems in front of us on stage and ask questions. And through forum theater we all engage in this, our sense of agency in trying alternatives. But then a lot of stories came out of these exercises, and I felt so many people who had been killed disappear, unburied, or they are buried in our bodies, that had come here to do a play about these issues doesn't seem enough. Then I started developing the ritual theater and working with ritual. And then I discovered Joanna Macy and the work that reconnects, and discovered that we are in a bigger collective trauma, which is our separation, a story of separation from nature. So I started including the more than human world. And every community I had worked with, from youth to elders, from ex-combatants to victims of all kinds of things, we are all starving for ritual. We're all starving for possibilities to come together to deal with the things that pain us. Because when we tell the story of what pains us, what makes you suffer, what makes you angry, what makes you feel despair, and makes you feel a great deal of fear, then we realize we are not alone. And when we are together, we can confront these issues. And ritual is such a beautiful language of how symbolically we cannot resolve these problems in an encounter, but we can dissolve them into different substances like mythology, like poetry, like dance, like scenes, poetic scenes, in which we transform those realities. And it engages our sense of agency, our capacity that we all have to do something, and what we call active hope. So, not that we are optimistic and feel that maybe things will get better. No, that we get up every day, deal with our trauma, free a little bit of the energy trapped in the trauma, and serve the emerging world. Because we are all the ones who are going to midwife that new world. Because as the actual world, the current world is collapsing, a new world is emerging at the same time. And that's what mythology has always show us and teach us, is that this has happened before, not in the way it is happening right now, but this has happened before. And perhaps as humanity, we're going through a rite of passage. Perhaps this being we call human being is about to flourish, because it seems to be is the only one who doesn't want to flourish. And maybe we'll take this horrendous destruction, almost the destruction of life on earth, almost the destruction of each other, for us to be able to wake up and to become who we are.
Well, I'm glad you're optimistic.
I know what I just get up every day. I love life. And I know that I had known suffering in my own body and all the people that I work with, that I heard their stories, but at the same time I can see them and see their beauty, that they are here, that every and life does that all the time. You destroy with poison, with ferticides, with chemistry, a place, and nature goes back, and the mycelium comes back, and because life generates life, and death is part of that. Death is not the end. Death is just part of that. There is so much pain and ugliness and destruction that we need to compost. So maybe something else will come out of it. I'm just fascinated by that idea.
Mm.
And I wake up every day to do my part on it. And I think that if we all do that, like what you're doing, my friend, doing these things, we are contributing with what we love.
Yeah, yeah. No, no, I believe it because in sort of my own imperfect way, I think about publishing poetry just online through social media, and I'm aware at some level, not to do with its any overt politics whatsoever, but a kind of humanist and spiritual politics
Mm,
that seems to be squeezed out of the picture, and the way social media in particular and the internet is sort of dehumanizing us, and there's a sense of the collective unconscious becoming more this mob surveillance thing, and it's a very, very weird time we live in, and I do feel artists have a great role to play, this
absolutely.
rehumanizing, spiritual kind of politics, really. Uh,
Yeah. You poets, you are the prophets.
I don't know
You
about me
know
being a
that
prophet.
I cannot know a most difficult endeavor that to create beauty through poetry. And thank you for doing that, for waking up. And I'm trying to write a second book. I'm calling it The Soul's Mycelium. And it's about the poetry of the world. It's about the mushrooms. They grew up in the midst of everything, you know, and so yes, it's such a difficult endeavor. I can move and I can do things, but to sit and chisel a poem, wow! But for
I don't
me,
know if I do much chiseling, but
well,
I relate
it
so
is
much.
fine. Or I vomit, but it's the biggest antidote to the ugliness and the dehumanization. So
Mm.
yes, I
Oh, it's there everywhere. The theatre
yeah.
you're dealing with, songs, music,
Hmm.
poetry. I sense in some, abstract, instinctive way that artists are trying to rise up,
Yeah.
and speak in their different ways, and help themselves first of all, but also help others.
Yes.
Um, but I did wonder where your energy came from, and also there's something inherently dangerous in the nature of your work, but maybe I'm overestimating that sense of danger because you've been through so much torture, you've been tortured, you've lost family, you've lost friends, that this sense of constantly cycling through other countries and other people's trauma. I don't know how it doesn't pull you down as well as maybe raise you up. Why it doesn't exhaust you?
Yeah, it's a good question. I ask myself and the people around me, I get energized. I feel that when we find the antidote, at least what feeds our soul, it grows soul. And I feel that a lot of my work is how to create spaces for that to grow soul. And the soil in which we compost all these things we have been talking about, all this madness, all this destruction, all this being lost, that has been the quality of modernity for so long. Yes, we have accomplished amazing things in technology, in science, and of course, if I get a heart attack, I hope they take me somewhere and give me a little bit of more years to enjoy life and do the work that I love doing. But at the same time, we had lost the connection to ourselves, to our deep self, to each other, and especially to the fact that we are nature, that nature is not out there, it's not outside of us, that we're not above or in the center of, that we are part of the web of life. So every forest being destroyed, every forest being burned right now by greed or is me, is in us. And it's so scary to think that we should connect to that. But what I find one and again is that one we're able to voice the pain, the grief, that grief compose the energy into beauty. And is what life does all the time, is what nature does. A seed of a mango tree falls into a rock and doesn't say, oh, there is not enough nutrients here. The hell, I'm not going to grow up. No, it does its best to be, and then becomes a beautiful bonsai and produces midget mangoes, small mangoes, but it does give everything. And I feel that that's what's been asked of all of us, is to give what you love. You do poetry. Other people are amazing with wood and create beautiful things and useful things. Unfortunately, many people who don't think that we carry gifts, we become consumers. And you cannot never have enough of what you don't really need. So we just keep burying ourselves in shit, in stuff that we don't need. And we feel emptier and emptier. So when we are able to create spaces to bless each other, to see each other in the unique expression of life that we are, I think we are contributing to creating a different kind of world for the future. Because you and I, my friend, our invitation is how we become the good ancestors for others, and how we become elders and think about the seventh generation, that all our actions will affect the seventh generation. And yes, and it's, well, that's one of the challenges I am engaged in right now, is how we initiate elders, because we are inundated by elders, and there is a huge difference, you know.
Well, it's a bit of a strange thing to get a bit older and
Mm.
realize, for better or for worse, that you are an elder, even if you don't particularly feel like one.
Mhm.
Um, I was really struck actually in relation to all this. Another thing that you said, where it actually was to do with the hospice care that you'd
Mm.
been doing, and the learning from people about the, what was it? The question was not whether you were a good parent, not whether you were a nice child, not whether you were a loyal friend, not whether you were a correct citizen, but the question was, did I live my life and did I become myself?
Mm.
And that really penetrated to me, and I've been thinking about it for the last 24 hours. And
Mm.
it's not really a question I can answer
Mm.
because I'm still trying to find that being. Yeah. Uh, and I assume you are too. And
Absolutely.
but it's scary when, or scary's a bit melodramatic, but I think people get ashamed of their weakness,
Mm.
uh, and to show weakness is kind of a shameful thing. I know there's a reverse to that, particularly in Western society with identity politics, where people almost turn weakness into a product for their identity, but that doesn't really seem like true weakness to me. But the stuff that ultimately truly makes you vulnerable deep down inside, that stuff always seems to be like a secret, whether you're conscious of it or not.
Mm. Mm. Absolutely. I resonate with that, and I really like that lesson from working with end of life, is especially the people who were resuscitated. And I was so interested, what happened, what do you see, and the light and all of that, and the message is not your time, or whatever it was. But this idea that what we're asked is whether or not you live your life, that we live our lives. Or like the African said, is when death finds you, let it find you alive. They don't take it for granted that because you're breathing and eating and defecating, you are alive. Alive is living your life and living your gift and giving the gift to the world, because the gift is not for you, it's not for us, it's to give it, to be given. Like again, the mango tree, it just gives mangoes. Whether there is a village to pick them up or not, they will rotten and generate more nutrients for what is coming next. So it's it's the invitation, and especially in these moments of such deep destruction are all around us. And collapsology is like the big thing right now because we have so many stories about how everything is collapsing. The social institutions, the ecological systems that sustain life, and the absence of meaning, which is probably the most connected to the conversation right now, is how do we find meaning in what we're doing in this world that seems that all of us are useless, are as nobodies. We who cares what we do because they have convinced us that we are nobodies. And when I work with young people in prisons and gang members, and I told them stories about the fact that there is no one like them in the 8 million billion people that exist in the world today, that they are completely unique. But and if they don't live their lives, if that life will never happen and has never happened in the history of the 200,000 years that we have been around, apparently, they will look at me and say, wow, man, I never heard that. I thought that it was an accident. My mom told me I'm here because the condom broke. But you're telling me that I am unique, that I am someone special? So that's the elder to be in all of us, because an elder is simply someone who looks like themselves,
Mhm.
you know, and we need a community to let us know that. We need a community to see us, to bless us, to support us. And then we can give everything back to the community, everything unique that we have, our unique way of flavoring life. It's not about knowledge. In Spanish, we said sabiduría, wisdom, not so much connected to saber, to knowledge, but to sabor, to taste. So, what is it that you taste? What is the poetry of life that you learn to savor, and then you give it to
Mhm.
everybody else? And I feel that every time someone does that, they keep alive, which is the other idea about death, is that there are the living dead and the dead dead. And the living dead are those that we still remember,
Mhm.
who left a print in the world that we, thousands of years later, are mentioning their names and quoting them and remembering them.
Mhm. Wow, that's so interesting, Hector, because I often think that intelligence isn't simply knowledge,
Yeah.
it's a feeling. And it's for some reason or other, people seem to have lost touch with the idea of feeling as a form of
Mm.
intelligence.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
well, thank you.
Oh, thank
Good
you,
to
Mark.
talk, good to talk to you, and I'll look forward to meeting you this week, and I'll try and get this up probably tomorrow, if not tonight.
Thank you. That's great.
Um, but I really admire your work, and the sense of ritual and community most definitely appeals to me because a writing life tends to be not solitary, lonely, but you're communicating often from a separate space, even though it can be sort of holy or spiritual, and you're kind of leaping across space to others somewhere else. But obviously, you're doing something with people together in a room, you
Mm.
and so that's a very different type of thing. And I think there's a hunger for that sort of communal gathering as people feel isolated, even though they're artificially connected by the internet, etc. They
Yeah. Yeah.
have that. They're not like the mango seed dropping on the rock. They're just falling through space. So
Uh,
yeah.
yeah. Well, but thanks to you, we can also connect to other people who will not make it to the room. And, we all contribute to this web, to
Mhm.
this mycelium that is feeding all of us and helping us make sense of this short passing through.
Mhm.
Hey, my brother, thank
Thank
you
you
so
very
much.
much.
I
Thank you
can't
very
wait to
much.
see you. All right.
Yeah,
Thank
look
you.
forward to it. Thank you, Hector.
Take care, you too, my friend. Bye
Bye.
bye. Ciao.